My golden child sister went missing. The day I told my mom I hated them both, my sister disappeared the day after I told our mom I hated her. But that's not what my mom says. She always called Claire her miracle baby, told everyone how amazing Claire was, and that her first smile made my dad quit drinking. She never said anything good about me though, but that made sense. Claire was quiet, gentle, and easy to love. Whereas I asked too many questions. I had too many opinions. The older we got, the more Claire learned to stay silent when I was punished. When I cried, she looked at her plate. When I yelled, she left the room. But then late at night, she'd sneak into my room, slip under the covers, and whisper, "I'm sorry." She was the only person who ever said that to me. The last time I saw her, we were at dinner. Mom said I'd never get into college with my attitude. Claire didn't stick up for me, and I snapped. I told my mom I was done pretending, that she broke people and called it parenting. Claire reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I hate this family," I said. "I hate you." Then I walked out. I stayed with my best friend. We ate ice cream in bed. I laughed so hard I cried. For the first time in months, I felt like myself. When I came home the next morning, Claire was gone. Her bed was made, her shoes still by the door, but the police were here. Our mother instantly collapsed into sobs for the cops, telling them Claire had been afraid of me, that I was jealous, that maybe I snapped. They searched my room and asked me questions for hours. There was no body, no evidence, just grief and suspicion. No one ever said it outright, but they looked at me like they knew, like I'd done it. Her friends stopped talking to me. Even my therapist suggested I unpack potential guilt. So I left. I changed my name, moved across the country, and became a mom. Ava is everything. I swore I'd be nothing like her grandmother. I told Ava I was proud of her when she failed, as long as she tried her best. I kissed her cheeks even when she pushed me away. I packed notes in her lunch, bought her a new blanket every time she outgrew one. But then she came home late and I didn't yell. I just said, "You're turning into a burden." She failed a test, and I told her she wasn't cut out for honors. I didn't scream. I just went cold, days without speaking. Watched her flinch like I used to. "Sometimes I feel like I have to be perfect around you," she said once. Her voice cracked. Mine didn't. "I'm not her," I told myself, but I didn't believe it. Ava asked to stay with her dad for a while. I said okay. That same week, my mother died from a stroke. Alone, no obituary, no service. I went back to that house for the first time in 20 years. It smelled the same, lemon cleaner and control. I boxed up her things like I was erasing her. In Claire's old room behind a warped floorboard, I found a notebook, her diary. The last entry read, "I tried to talk to her about what she did to Lila. She said if I brought it up again, she'd make me disappear like the kitten. I'm scared." No one knew about the kitten. I'd rescued it when I was 9, hid it in my closet, fed it bread crusts and peanut butter. Mom found out and said I was harboring filth. Next morning, the kitten was gone. She said it ran away. But I found out the truth when I took out the garbage that very night. My hands were shaking. I ran outside. I didn't think. I just went to the rose garden. She used to dig out there every spring, said it cleared her head. I grabbed a shovel and started to dig. Dirt sprayed my shoes. My arms ached, but I didn't stop. Then I hit something. A metal box. Inside, Claire's old hairbrush, a scarf with dried red crusted along the edge, her friendship bracelets, and a Polaroid of Claire, bruised, eyes wide, a date scribbled in red ink one day before she vanished, and a burned stuffed rabbit, her favorite. I dropped to my knees. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't a body, but it was enough to know my mother lied, that she punished the wrong child, that when I finally refused to be her mirror, she broke the other one. I called the police, reopened the case. When Ava came home, I was sitting on the porch crying. She asked what was wrong. I found Claire. I said her body, number, her truth. The detective assigned to Claire's case was named Sandra Reeves. She had these intense eyes that seemed to look right through you, but in a way that made you feel like she was actually seeing you, not just sizing you up. I met with her almost daily that first week after finding the box. We sat in the local police station's interview room, not the scary one you see on TV, just a beige room with uncomfortable chairs and a coffee machine that made terrible coffee. "We're going to need to do a thorough search of the property," she told me on day 3. "Ground penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, the works." I nodded, feeling numb. The idea that my sister might be buried somewhere on our childhood property made me physically sick. I threw up twice in the hotel bathroom that night. The search began the next morning. I couldn't watch. I drove around town instead, past our old high school, past the ice cream shop where Claire and I used to get rainbow sprinkle cones in summer. Everything looked smaller, faded somehow. I ended up at the cemetery where my father was buried. He died of a heart attack 5 years after Claire disappeared. I hadn't come to the funeral. His headstone was simple, just his name, dates, and beloved husband, not father. I stood there for a long time, wondering if he'd known what kind of monster he was married to, if he'd suspected, if he'd chosen not to see. My phone rang around noon. It was Detective Reeves. "We found something," she said. Her voice was careful, measured, not a body, "but you should come back to the house." When I pulled up, there were police vehicles everywhere. Neighbors stood on their lawns, watching. Mrs. Peterson was still there, older now, her hair completely white. She didn't recognize me. I was grateful for that small mercy. Detective Reeves met me at the edge of the property. She led me to the shed at the back of the yard, a place I'd rarely gone as a kid. My mother kept it locked, said there were dangerous tools inside. "We found a hidden compartment under the floorboards," she explained, pointing to where officers had pulled up the wooden planks. There was a box, letters mostly, and this. She handed me a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a hospital bracelet with Claire's name on it, dated 3 days after she disappeared. "She was alive," I whispered, my legs suddenly weak. "After she vanished, she was alive." Detective Reeves nodded grimly. "The letters suggest your mother checked her into a private psychiatric facility under a different name. She told them Claire was violent, delusional, a danger to herself and others." "That's insane," I said, my voice rising. "Claire was the gentlest person I've ever known. She wouldn't hurt anyone." According to these records, she was released after 6 months. After that, the trail goes cold again. I felt dizzy, like the ground was tilting beneath me. Claire hadn't been murdered that night. She'd been alive, locked away somewhere, labeled as crazy. And then what? Where did she go after that? The investigation intensified after that. Detective Reeves obtained court orders for the records from the psychiatric facility. I stayed in town, extending my hotel reservation week by week. Ava came to stay with me on weekends, bringing homework and her laptop. We'd order pizza and watch movies, carefully avoiding talking about the investigation. But sometimes at night, she'd crawl into my bed like Claire used to, and we'd hold hands in the dark. "I'm sorry I was mean to you," she told me one night, her voice small in the darkness. "You weren't," I said, squeezing her hand. "I was the one who was turning into her, into my mother. You're nothing like her," Ava said fiercely. "Nothing." I wanted so badly to believe her. 3 weeks into the investigation, Detective Reeves called me to the station. She had a thick folder on the table when I arrived. "We've got the complete records from Lakewood Psychiatric," she said. "Claire was admitted under the name Claire Wilson. Your mother told them she was her niece, that her parents had died in a car accident." She pushed a photo across the table. It was Claire in a hospital gown, her face blank, her eyes empty. She looked drugged. The admission notes say she was delusional, claiming her mother was abusive and had called animals. They put her on heavy antipsychotics. My stomach churned. She wasn't delusional. She was telling the truth. "I know," Detective Reeves said quietly. "The staff notes show that over time, she stopped talking about the abuse. She became compliant, quiet. They considered it improvement." "They broke her," I whispered. "She was released into your mother's care after 6 months. The last note says she was subdued but functional." "And then what?" I asked, desperate for answers. "Where did she go?" Detective Reeves hesitated. "That's where it gets complicated. We found records of a Claire Wilson enrolling in a high school in Idaho the following year. Same birth date as your sister, but the school photo doesn't look much like her." She showed me the yearbook photo. The girl had Claire's blonde hair, but her face was different, rounder, with a sharper nose. It wasn't Claire. "We think your mother may have paid someone to assume Claire's new identity," Detective Reeves explained, "to create a paper trail in case anyone came looking. So we still don't know where the real Claire went," I said, my hope deflating. "Not yet, but we're not giving up." I left the station feeling hollow. All these years, I'd carried the weight of believing my sister was dead, that my mother had culled her because of our fight. Now I had to face an even more terrible possibility, that Claire had been alive all this time, somewhere out there, maybe still believing I'd abandoned her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my hotel room, my mind racing. Around 3 a.m., I had a thought that made me freeze mid-step. The diary. Claire's diary had entries going back years. What if there were clues in earlier entries that I'd missed? I called Detective Reeves first thing in the morning. She agreed to let me look through the diary again, under supervision at the station. I spent hours going through it page by page, reading entries from when Claire was 12, 13, 14. Most were typical teenage stuff. Crushes on boys, fights with friends, complaints about homework. But scattered throughout were darker entries, hints of our mother's true nature. "Mom threw away Lila's art project today. Said it was garbage." Lila cried for hours. I wanted to say something, but I was too scared. Found Mom going through my drawers again. She She read my notes from Jessica, said I couldn't be friends with her anymore because her parents are divorced. Mom took my door off the hinges because I asked to go to the mall with friends, said I didn't deserve privacy if I was going to be ungrateful. Reading these entries was like looking at our childhood through a different lens. I'd always known our mother was cruel to me, but I'd thought Claire was spared, the golden child, the perfect one. But her diary told a different story. She'd just been better at hiding her pain, at playing the role our mother demanded. Then I found it, an entry from 6 months before she disappeared. I found Mom's secret box today. I was looking for stamps in her desk and found a key taped under the drawer. It opened the metal box in her closet. There were weird papers inside, birth certificates with different names, a bunch of IDs with Mom's picture but different names, and pictures of a girl who looks kind of like me but isn't me. Mom caught me looking. She slapped me so hard my ear rang for hours. Said if I ever told anyone, especially Lila, she'd make me sorry. I'm scared. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the page. Different identities. A girl who looked like Claire. What the hell had my mother been involved in? I showed the entry to Detective Reeves. Her expression grew serious. This suggests premeditation, she said. Your mother may have been planning Claire's disappearance for months. But why? I asked. Why make Claire disappear and not me? I was the difficult one, the one she couldn't control. Detective Reeves didn't have an answer, but the diary entry gave us a new lead. My mother's secret box might still be somewhere in the house. We went back that afternoon. The house had been thoroughly searched already, but we hadn't been specifically looking for a hidden box in my mother's closet. The closet was empty now. The clothes donated or thrown away. Detective Reeves and I examined every inch, tapping walls for hollow spots, checking for loose floorboards, nothing. Maybe she moved it, I said, disappointed. After Claire found it. Let's check the attic, Detective Reeves suggested. People often hide things they don't want found up there. The attic access was in the hallway ceiling. A uniformed officer brought a ladder, and Detective Reeves climbed up first. I followed, ducking my head to avoid the low beams. The space was stifling hot and filled with dust. Boxes were stacked haphazardly. Christmas decorations, old tax returns, photo albums. We spent an hour going through everything. I found my baby clothes, preserved in tissue paper, school projects from elementary school, even some of Claire's old toys, but no metal box with fake IDs. I was about to give up when I noticed something odd about the insulation along one wall. It didn't quite match the rest, as if it had been disturbed and put back. I pointed it out to Detective Reeves. She carefully pulled back the pink fiberglass, revealing a small door cut into the wall. Inside was a crawl space, and there, pushed against the far corner, was a metal box. Detective Reeves pulled on gloves before opening it. Inside were exactly what Claire had described: birth certificates, driver's licenses, social security cards, all with different names but my mother's photo. There were also several IDs for a teenage girl who resembled Claire but wasn't her. Same girl from the Idaho high school yearbook. Your mother had a whole collection of false identities, Detective Reeves said, bagging the evidence. This is looking less like a simple family tragedy and more like something organized. The implications made my skin crawl. What kind of person has multiple fake identities ready to go? What had my mother been involved in? As we continued searching the crawl space, I found a small leather-bound address book pushed into a corner. The entries were in some kind of code, just numbers and letters, no names. Detective Reeves bagged it as evidence. This might help us track down where Claire went after the psychiatric facility, she said. If your mother was working with others, these could be contacts. The next few days were a blur of interviews and evidence reviews. The police brought in a cryptography expert to look at the address book. They tracked down former staff from Lakewood Psychiatric. They even found the girl who had posed as Claire Wilson in Idaho, now a woman in her 30s named Melissa Turner. I sat across from Melissa in another interview room. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her wedding ring. I was 16 and homeless when your mother found me, she explained. She offered me $5,000 to enroll in school under this fake name, stay for a year, then disappear again. I needed the money. Did you ever meet the real Claire? I asked. Did she tell you anything about where Claire might have gone? Melissa shook her head. She just gave me the paperwork and the cash. Said the less I knew, the better. She hesitated, then added, but she did mention something about the network once. Said they helped girls disappear when they needed to. The network? I repeated. What network? I don't know. That's all she said. It wasn't much, but it was something. A network that helped girls disappear. It could mean anything. Human trafficking, some kind of cult, or maybe something less sinister, like an underground railroad for abuse victims. But why would my mother be involved in any of that? The cryptography expert cracked the code in the address book a week later. The entries weren't addresses at all. They were bank account numbers, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. Detective Reeves obtained warrants to trace the money. Your mother was moving large sums through these accounts, she told me. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. Where did she get that kind of money? I asked, stunned. She was a housewife. My dad worked at an insurance company. That's what we're trying to figure out. The investigation expanded. Financial crimes experts were brought in. They discovered that my father's insurance company job had been a cover. He'd actually worked for a private security firm with government contracts, the kind of firm that operated in legal gray areas. We think your parents may have been involved in some kind of identity creation scheme, Detective Reeves explained. Possibly providing new identities for people who needed to disappear, witnesses, informants, maybe even agents. My head was spinning. My boring suburban parents as some kind of spy-adjacent identity forgers? It seemed impossible, but the evidence was mounting. What does this have to do with Claire? I asked. Why would they make their own daughter disappear? We're still working on that part, Detective Reeves admitted. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A former colleague of my father's reached out to the police after seeing a news story about the investigation. His name was Walter Simmons, and he'd worked with my dad at the security firm for 15 years. Walter was in his 70s now, retired and living in Florida. He agreed to a video call with Detective Reeves and me. His face on the screen was deeply lined, his white hair thin, but his eyes were sharp. I wasn't supposed to talk about this ever, he said. But George has been gone for years now, and with all this coming out, he sighed heavily. Your father wasn't just creating identities, he was hiding people who were in danger. What kind of danger? I asked. The worst kind. People who'd witnessed things they shouldn't have, people who'd gotten involved with dangerous organizations and wanted out. Your mother helped with the paperwork, creating backstories, teaching them how to become someone new. And Claire? My voice cracked on her name. What happened to her? Walter's expression grew pained. I don't know the details, but about a month before she disappeared, your father came to me very upset. He said Claire had found something that she was asking questions. He was worried she might talk to the wrong people. So they made her disappear, I said, the realization like ice in my veins. Their own daughter. I think they thought they were protecting her, Walter said gently. And you. If she knew too much, it put all of you in danger. Do you know where they sent her? Detective Reeves asked. Walter shook his head. George never told me. The fewer people who knew, the safer she'd be. It was maddening to be so close to answers and still so far. Claire had been alive after her disappearance. She'd been institutionalized, then released, and then what? Where had she gone? Was she still alive? Still out there somewhere with a new name, a new life? Maybe even thinking I'd been part of the plan to make her disappear? The investigation continued, but progress was slow. The network my parents had been involved with had dissolved years ago. Most of the key players were dead or impossible to find. The money trail went cold after 2010. I had to return to Oregon eventually. Ava needed to get back to school, and I had a job to return to. Detective Reeves promised to keep me updated on any developments. Don't give up hope, she told me as I was leaving. We'll keep looking for Claire. Back home, I tried to resume normal life, but everything had changed. The world looked different now that I knew the truth, or at least part of it. My mother hadn't called Claire in a rage. My parents had been living double lives, involved in something much bigger and more dangerous than I could have imagined. And somewhere out there, Claire might still be alive. I couldn't just sit and wait for the police to find answers. I started doing my own research, spending nights hunched over my laptop after Ava went to bed. I joined online forums for people searching for missing relatives. I read everything I could find about identity creation, witness protection, disappearance experts. One night, about 3 months after returning home, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was simply about Claire. My heart pounding, I opened it. I knew your parents. I helped Claire start over. She made me promise never to tell anyone where she went, but she's been following your investigation in the news. She's considering making contact. Be patient. There was no signature, no way to reply. I forwarded it to Detective Reeves immediately, but the sender had used an anonymous email service. It was untraceable. I printed the email and read it over and over, analyzing every word. Claire was alive. She knew about the investigation. She was considering contacting me. I waited, checking my email obsessively, jumping every time my phone rang. A week passed, then two, nothing. Then a postcard arrived. It showed the Seattle skyline. There was no message, just my name and address. The postmark was from Tacoma, Washington, Washington, I called Detective Reeves. It could be nothing, she cautioned. Or it could be a lead. I can connect you with law enforcement in that area, but without more to go on. I'm going there, I decided. I need to look for myself. Lila, we don't know if it's safe. If Claire is hiding because of something your parents were involved in, I don't care, I interrupted. She's my sister. I've spent 20 years thinking she might be dead, that I might have somehow been responsible. If there's even a chance she's in Washington, I have to go. Detective Reeves sighed. At least let me make some calls first. Give me a few days to see if we can narrow down the search area. I agreed to wait, but I started making preparations anyway. I arranged for Ava to stay with her dad. I requested time off work. I researched hotels in Tacoma and Seattle. 3 days later, Detective Reeves called back. We might have something, she said. There's a woman named Clare Martin living in a small town called Port Angeles, about 2 hours from Seattle. She moved there in 2005. No records before that. She's about the right age, and her driver's license photo has some similarities to what Claire might look like now. Clara Martin. The name hit me like a physical blow. Martin had been the last name I'd chosen when I changed my identity. Was it possible Claire had picked the same name? Was she trying to maintain some connection to me, even in hiding? I'm going, I said. Today. Lila, wait, but I'd already made up my mind. The flight to Seattle felt endless. I couldn't read, couldn't watch movies, couldn't even close my eyes. All I could think about was Claire. What she might look like now, what her life had been like, whether she'd be happy to see me or angry that I'd found her. I rented a car at the airport and drove straight to Port Angeles, a small coastal town nestled between mountains and sea. It was beautiful in a rugged way, the kind of place where people went to disappear into nature. Detective Reeves had given me an address, a small house on the outskirts of town. I drove past it twice, working up the courage to stop. It was a blue cottage with white trim, a garden full of wildflowers, a wind chime hanging from the porch. It looked peaceful, happy. Finally, I parked across the street. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the keys twice. What if it wasn't her? What if it was her, but she didn't want to see me? What if she blamed me for everything? I was about to get out of the car when the front door of the cottage opened. A woman stepped out onto the porch. She was slender, with blonde hair cut in a short bob. She wore jeans and a green sweater. Even from a distance, I knew immediately. Claire. She looked right at my car as if she'd been expecting me. Then she raised her hand in a small wave. I got out of the car on legs that felt like they might give way beneath me. I crossed the street slowly, giving her time to go back inside if she wanted to. She didn't. She stayed on the porch, watching me approach. Up close, she looked both exactly like the Claire I remembered and like a complete stranger. Her face had the same delicate features, but there were fine lines around her eyes now. A maturity to her expression that hadn't been there at 15. Her eyes were still that clear, bright blue. Lila, she said, and her voice was the same too, just a little deeper with age. Claire, I whispered. It's really you. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I wasn't sure you'd come. I've been looking for you for 20 years. She stepped forward then, and suddenly we were hugging, both of us crying. She felt solid and real in my arms, not a ghost or a memory. My sister, alive. When we finally pulled apart, she wiped her eyes and said, "Come inside. We have a lot to talk about." Her house was cozy and filled with books. There were plants on every windowsill, paintings on the walls that I later learned were her own work. It felt like a real home, lived in and loved. We sat at her kitchen table, cups of tea growing cold between us as she told me her story. I found Dad's files, she began. He kept them in a locked cabinet in his workshop. I was looking for a screwdriver and found the key taped under his workbench. Inside were all these documents, fake IDs, birth certificates, detailed instructions for people on how to become someone new. She took a shaky breath. I confronted Mom about it. That was my mistake. She completely panicked, said I'd put everyone in danger by knowing that people would come after all of us if they thought I might talk. Who? I asked. What people? Claire shrugged. She never said specifically, just that Dad's work involved helping people hide from very dangerous organizations, criminal networks, corrupt officials, that kind of thing. She said they'd called to keep their secrets. So they made you disappear, I said, to protect you. And you, Claire added. They were convinced if I stayed, I'd put you in danger too. Mom said they'd make it look like I'd run away, that after a while everyone would stop looking. But they sent you to a psychiatric hospital first, I said, remembering the records. They drugged you. Claire's expression darkened. That was Mom's idea. She thought if I was officially diagnosed as mentally ill, anything I might say later about their activities would be dismissed, and the medication kept me compliant while they arranged my new identity. The calculated cruelty of it made me feel sick. And after the hospital, Dad had arranged everything. A new name, a new social security number, a family in Montana who agreed to take me in, people who'd used his services before. I lived with them until I turned 18, then moved around for a while before settling here. Did you ever try to contact me? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me for years. Claire looked down at her hands. I wanted to, so many times, but Dad made me promise not to, said it would put both of us at risk. And after a while, I convinced myself you were better off without me, that you'd moved on. I never moved on, I said, my voice breaking. I thought you were dead. I thought Mom had called you because of our fight, because I said I hated her and left you alone with her. Claire reached across the table and took my hand. None of this was your fault, Lila. None of it. We talked for hours. I told her about my life, college, my marriage and divorce, Ava. She told me about hers. She'd become an art teacher, never married but had close friends, a life she'd built from scratch. We cried and laughed and tried to bridge the 20-year gap between us. Why now? I finally asked. Why did you decide to contact me after all this time? I saw the news about Mom's death and the investigation. A friend sent me an article. When I read that you'd found my diary, she paused. I realized you'd never stopped looking for me. And with both Mom and Dad gone, maybe the danger was gone too. Is it? I asked. Are you still afraid? I don't know, she admitted. It's been so long. Most of the people Dad was hiding from are probably dead or in prison by now, but old habits are hard to break. I've been Claire Martin for 20 years now. Sometimes I forget I was ever Claire Matthews. We decided to take things slowly. I stayed in Port Angeles for a week, spending every day with Claire, getting to know the woman she'd become. She was still gentle, still kind, but there was a strength to her now, a resilience forged through everything she'd endured. Before I left, we made plans for her to come visit me and meet Ava. She was nervous about it, afraid of disrupting my life, afraid of attachments after being alone for so long, but she wanted to try. No more disappearing. I made her promise as we hugged goodbye at the airport. No more disappearing, she agreed, squeezing my hand 3 times. I love you. On the flight home, I thought about all the years we'd lost, all the pain we'd both endured because of our parents' secrets, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in 20 years. Hope my sister was alive. We'd found each other again, and maybe, just maybe, we could both finally heal. When I got home, I called Detective Reeves to tell her everything. She was relieved Claire was safe, but concerned about the larger implications of my parents' activities. There could still be people out there connected to all this, she warned. People who might not want these old secrets coming to light. What should we do? I asked. Be careful, she said. Let me work with the authorities in Washington to make sure Claire is protected. And Lila, watch your back too. I took her warning seriously. I installed a security system in my house. I became more careful about my routines, more aware of my surroundings, but I refused to live in fear. I'd spent 20 years carrying the weight of Claire's disappearance. I wouldn't spend another 20 looking over my shoulder. Claire came to visit a month later. Watching her and Ava together was like seeing 2 pieces of my heart finally meet. They took to each other immediately, both artistic, both thoughtful, both with the same quiet laugh. Ava showed Claire her drawings. Claire taught Ava how to mix watercolors. They stayed up late talking while I pretended not to eavesdrop from the kitchen. Your mom used to sneak into my room at night when we were kids, I overheard Claire telling Ava one evening. She'd hold my hand until I fell asleep. She still does that sometimes, Ava replied. When I'm sick or upset, something broke and healed in me simultaneously. Hearing that, the cycle wasn't repeating after all. I kept the good parts of my childhood, the sisterly love, the hand-holding in the dark, and left the rest behind. Claire decided to stay in Port Angeles. It was her home now, and she had built a life there she wasn't ready to leave. But we visited each other often. She became Aunt Clara to Ava, a regular presence in our lives despite the distance. The investigation into my parents' activities continued, but it moved slowly. Many of the records were decades old, many of the people involved long gone. Detective Reeves kept me updated when she could, but there were more questions than answers. Your parents were part of something bigger, she told me during one of our check-in calls, a network that operated outside official channels. We may never know the full extent of it. I made peace with that uncertainty. The truth that mattered most, that Claire was alive, that she hadn't been killed because of me, I already had. 6 months after finding Claire, I was going through the last of my mother's belongings, boxes I'd brought back from the house but hadn't had the heart to open yet. In a manila envelope at the bottom of one box, I found a letter addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. It was dated just a few weeks before her death. My hands trembled as I opened it, not not sure if I was ready for whatever final words she had for me. Lila, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've probably started asking questions. You always ask too many questions. It was the thing I loved and feared most about you. I sat down hard on the floor, shocked by those words. My mother had loved something about me. What happened with Claire was unforgivable. I know that. We thought we were protecting both of you, but we were wrong. So wrong. Your father wanted to tell you the truth before he died, but I wouldn't let him. Another mistake in a lifetime of mistakes. The letter continued, explaining more about their work, about the danger they believed they were in, about the decision to send Claire away. Much of it I already knew from Claire and the investigation, but seeing it in my mother's own handwriting made it more real somehow. I don't expect your forgiveness, the letter concluded. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that despite everything, I did love you, Lila. I just didn't know how to show it. I was broken long before you were born, shaped by things you can't imagine. That's not an excuse, just a truth I was never brave enough to tell you while I was alive. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. It didn't erase the years of pain, the emotional abuse, the terrible decisions she'd made, but it was something I never thought I'd have. An acknowledgement, however inadequate, that she had failed as a mother, that she knew it, that somewhere inside her cold exterior had been a person capable of regret. I showed the letter to Claire when she visited next. She read it silently, her expression unreadable. Do you forgive her? She asked when she finished. I thought about it for a long time. No, I finally said, but I understand her a little better now, and that's enough for me to move forward. Claire nodded, folding the letter carefully and handing it back to me. That's how I feel too. Understanding without forgiveness. We went for a walk that evening, down to the park where Ava was meeting friends. The summer air was warm, the sky painted in pinks and oranges as the sun set. Claire linked her arm through mine, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache with remembered closeness. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found Dad's files? She asked. If we'd just grown up normally? All the time, I admitted. But then I think about Ava, and how none of this would have led to her. And I can't wish for a different path, even with all the pain. Claire squeezed my arm. You're a good mom, Lila. Nothing like her. I'm trying, I said. Every day I'm trying. We watched Ava laughing with her friends, her head thrown back, completely unselfconscious in her joy. She saw us and we waved back. 2 sisters standing side by side after decades apart. The investigation continued to uncover pieces of my parents' past, fragments of the truth that Detective Reeves would share when she could. Some of it was shocking, some merely sad, but none of it changed what mattered most. That Claire and I had found our way back to each other, that we were healing, that the cycle of pain had been broken. 1 year after finding Claire, I stood in my backyard watching her and Ava plant flowers along the fence. They were laughing about something, dirt smudged on their cheeks, completely absorbed in their task. The sight filled me with a peace I'd never thought possible. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reeves. New lead on the network. Call when you can. I looked at Claire and Ava again, at their hands in the earth, creating something beautiful together. The past would always be there, with its unanswered questions and painful truths, but so would this present moment, this hard-won happiness. I put my phone away. The past could wait a little longer. Right now, I wanted to plant flowers with my sister and my daughter, to feel the sun on my face and the dirt under my fingernails, to be fully present in this life I'd fought so hard to build. Need help? I called to them, already walking across the grass. Claire looked up, shielding her eyes against the sun. Always, she said, smiling. We've got plenty of room for more flowers. I knelt beside them, taking the trowel Claire offered me. Together we dug into the earth, making space for new growth.